which will be given by Dr. Abdul. He will be speaking to us today on vitalism as an African ethical basis for human enhancement. Dr. Abdul, please, if you are here, we are happy to have you to speak to us. Oh, it seems like Abdul is not here. He was here before, and maybe his network problem. So while we are waiting for him to join in, maybe we should proceed with taking Q&A for the two lectures that we have had. Then afterwards we'll have Abdul's presentation. So please, if you have any question, comments for Dr. Fayemi's lecture and Ms. Wakani's lecture, kindly raise your hand up. I will call you to unmute your microphone and ask your question or make your comment. So while we are still waiting for the audience to articulate their questions, I want a bit of clarification on the intersection. This clarification is actually going to Ms. Wakani. I want to know this. You talked about human intelligence and AI intelligence, and I'm just wondering to know, is there any difference between these two? Because you also talked about artisan intelligence, and what came to my mind where you were when we were talking about that is this is in our Google VO3, where AI can actually create something very marvelous. And if they can create, then why say that they do not have the artisan intelligence you talked about? So just a bit of clarification for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. So when I talk about the difference between human natural intelligence, which we all know what human natural intelligence is, and artificial intelligence, I am making the argument that AI is limited to its designer. It's limited to the logic of its designer. As we know right now, we have not developed enough AI models to include other knowledges. So because there is that closed cap in terms of the logic of the designer, my argument is that there is knowledge that is, this relational knowledge is emerging. So what does an AI system that is designed to pick up on the emergent nature of relational knowledge that happens on land, that happens in places that are not even connected to the rest of society? What does that look like? What do we stand to lose, I guess is what I'm asking. And who do we need to become in order to be able to include those knowledges that are emerging on the margins, on the so-called margins, that cannot be provided for in the current systems that we have, the AI systems that we have, that are, the data is not enough to include that relational knowledge, to include those ethics and values of Ubuntu, because that's not how they're that's not how it is inherently shaped.
Okay, thank you. So please, do we have questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I really want to appreciate the clarity of Hoffman's presentation. And I could see while she was presenting the connection between some of the ideas that she ventilated and an aspect of my talk. I'm just wondering, the proverbs that you have cited, I'm a lover of proverbs, and I do realize that the Ubuntu mantra that is much quoted seems to resonate in many cultures in sub-Saharan Africa. My question, one will relate directly to artificial intelligence, but the other one is, which is not related directly, is do you think in maybe East African cultures, East African, let us limit to that, that we have in different languages proverbs expressing interdependence, personhood, that, or do we have currently collection of proverbs across these related and different languages in East Africa on what it means to be human, right? Instead of relying, as we do often, on the South African popular phrase, right? So that's the first question. The second question has to do with what do you think is a most fundamental objection to this idea of communal conception of personhood, of being, especially your claim about the right to land, that the right to work is closely attached to the right to land. Imagine a capitalist world that we have now. We have, especially in the Nigerian context, we have those that we call land grabbers. So sorry. Okay. So land grabbers, they are just there. They are capitalists. So even when you have in Ghanaian context, as Kwasi already once mentioned, that there is a right to land related to maternal lineage that one comes from, that they always have the right to land. Anyone within that household. We do know that those things are more fictions than reality as we speak. Even if you live in a communal setting, you want to farm, you can't even do so because of the high impact of capitalism. Who has the power, economic power, decides the economy, right? So my question is, what do you think is the threat to this conception of personhood that you have? Because once you're able to locate that, it may crack the whole idea of artisanal intelligence that you are creating through kaleidoscopic Ubuntu vision. So what criticism have you anticipated, and what would be your reaction to such a critique? Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. So I'll answer the first question was about the proverbs. Yes, there are so many proverbs that we could draw from. It doesn't always have to be the I am because of who we are, or a person is a person through other persons. Actually, my project with the African Folktales Project is a recollection of all those stories and proverbs that are, encoded with indigenous African knowledge. So I can direct you to the Ubuntu Hub, and there you will find the curriculum where teachers are actually building out based on their own stories from different regions across the continent. There's like more than 21,000 teachers signed up on this hub. So that's one thing. And I'm really interested in seeing what else comes up. And maybe this is where also artificial intelligence, we could use AI tools to read the pattern of different proverbs that actually talk about the same and start to use different ones. Now, in terms of the criticism on this communal aspect of personhood, one of the main criticisms is always that it negates the individual experience, right? Or that the individual is not, the individual sovereignty is not provided for within that communal. And of course, that's a very important point to make. based on your experience from the Nigerian context of land, we have the same problem in Kenya, where land is inherited, land is what used to be communal land is now family land, right? And actually, we have a big problem with land in Kenya, where most of the same people that own land are the same ones who buy land. So it is an inherent problem where children are growing up in high-rise buildings or in smaller communities where they don't have access to land. And of course, grandparents who migrated to the city, therefore then there's no land to go back to. So my argument with that is that we also need to look at the policies of land. So this is more at a policy level. What can we do when we're looking at building new systems of governance, new systems, new AI systems, whether it's education or whatever? We cannot talk about indigenous knowledge or African knowledge without talking about the land itself, because this knowledge is directly related to place-based. It's place-based knowledge, right? Even the language itself emerges out of the land. So we can't even talk about revitalizing African languages or translations and that sort of thing when we don't have the experience of land. Because what's the point of speaking a particular language when it doesn't serve you in the centers, which that language itself was land-based. So I think what I'm trying to get at is to create this momentum to start thinking about what it means to have even different land policies, because we know that post-colonial Africa meant that land, the way land was distributed, became different to what it was prior to colonialism. So now that we have this opportunity to build a brand new landscape, can we also rethink what it means to have the experience of being on land? And when we're looking at the education systems, how can we be teaching children about sustainable development, about environmental knowledge and all of that, but they don't have access to land to experience what this means, to even understand what the language that they use for describing certain things on land. So this place-based knowledge to me is directly related to our right to work and our right to relate. And if we don't have access to land, then we can't really be talking about the Ubuntu principles of community when we don't have places for those communities to be observed. So it is a policy issue. And I think this is where maybe such a forum, we need to think clearly about how to speak to our policymakers about this experience of land-based experience as being inherently tied to the way we see ourselves as being in community, as being, as being in Ubuntu.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. That's quite good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Akani, for your responses. Please, if you have a question or comments, please indicate by raising your virtual hand up, then I will call you to ask your question. So maybe while we are still waiting, we still have a little more time. I would want to ask you a question, Dr. Fahimi. While you were giving your lecture, a paper I recently read came to my mind where the author, I think is Isaiah Negedu, claims that the starting point of the discussion of transhumanism in Africa should be centered on preparedness. He raises the question of, is Africa technologically and scientifically prepared for the transhumanist future? And I really want to know your take on that, on this from your necropolitics perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that question. And by reinterpreting what you have asked so that we're on the same page, you are asking in Africa's future of artificial intelligence, what should be the starting moment? Are we ready? Should we be preparing, or we should just kick the ground running? I think to an extent, to the extent that it is true that we still have more of a romantic culture, romanticizing the past, delaying the present, and not doing so much to keep pace with the rate at which artificial intelligence, human enhancement, and other biotechnologies are emerging. I want to disagree that what we need to do is not a question of either or. To the extent that it is important to prepare, I think from a necropolitical perspective, which is about being very circumspect about the political environment informing, enhancement technologies. Enhancement technologies, yes, they are portrayed as a kind of advancement that transcends human limitation, but they can also inadvertently perpetuate existing power imbalances. And necropolitics is saying that currently the way the world order is created is such that we have spaces for people living and spaces for people having shushu deaths. Yes, they are surviving, but they are socially dead because of the structures, the distribution and access to technologies. They are highly influenced by geopolitical powers, economic factors, and those populations that are marginalized, they often end up being used for experimentation in the name of peanuts, giving them what you might call in the name of benefits. But those benefits that they get at the end from research endeavors that actually result in real products, biotechnological products, whether from gene editing, from advanced neuro implants, those technologies, biotechnologies, they are highly expensive. They are resource intensive. They are controlled by corporations outside, especially outside the global south, right? So what we just need to do, if you take for an example now, clinical trials for new drugs or for technologies, where do they happen? They are frequently conducted in poor or racialized populations in the global south. So, and sometimes we do not have enough protections for the participants. In most cases, the benefits for them are just tokenistic. So what we really need to do, apart from preparing to also buckle up, catch up with these technologies, we need to be more sensitive to the political environment by being more critical, okay? Voicing out about the possibility of being victims of human enhancement technologies. So necropolitics is asking us who gets to fully live and who is left to die prematurely because of the global space under which these technologies are emerging. So the question of equity must really come to fore. And it's more of advocacy, more of activism required. And it should not be pursued in exclusion from actually getting prepared, digging deep. How can we develop ourselves at personal levels? So I think this should be done pari passu. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your response. Please, do we have any question or comments? Okay.
I can add a little bit to what Dr. Yeah.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay. Is there time?
No, you can make your
Okay.
comments.
Yeah, no, I wanted to just build up on that and say, I think we also have a question of how prepared are our education systems to have this conversation with leadership? Because the children, we're raising a new generation of kids who are going to be significantly affected by this question of transhumanism, which imagines, transhumanism itself imagines that, human flourishing comes from enhancing the body, right? And mind with machines, and which bodies are elite bodies that are going to be enhanced by this. But then from that perspective of our relational intelligence, this Ubuntu idea of relationality, flourishing comes from enhancing our relationships with each other, with land. So how can we build systems that recognize that as the pattern of flourishing for different communities across the continent? Because the danger of transhumanism in Africa is as with other parts of the world, is to recreate or create a new elite of the enhanced, and then further exclude those who are not even part of the system, right? So this is really at the policy level. This discussion needs to be happening at that level to understand what the risks really are, and to see what kind of technologies can we have that can uplift this communal flourishing and not just the individual. Because we know that if we are embracing a technology that is built to that logic of individualism, it's going to enhance an individual. It's going to enhance that individual rather than the community. So what can we do here? And that's why this idea of small language models that read the pattern of what it means to be human from an African perspective is really important.
Okay, thank you, Wakani, for these comments.